We've got a Grand Prix coming up this Sunday in Austin, Texas. And Austin, Texas, and the United States in general love to go bigger and better than anybody else. But before we get into all of that, there's still plenty of news coming out with discussion about 2022. And here this Monday at GPFans, we're talking Australia 2022 and of course, the team's fears of those new regulations. Before we get into all the headlines, just a reminder, hit the subscribe button down below to stay up to date with all that we do here at GPFans. Now, let's get into the news in Formula 1 this Monday. Australian Grand Prix Corporation CEO Andrew Westacott believes the 2022 running of the Melbourne Grand Prix will be a make or break event for the city in its hosting of the race. The city of Melbourne has spent 262 days in lockdown since March 2020 across 6 different periods, and the latest lockdown was eased last Sunday. The race itself has been cancelled on the last 2 occasions, of course, after a member of the McLaren team contracted the coronavirus in 2020, and then Australia's COVID protocols meant the running of the 2021 event was first delayed and then cancelled this year before being replaced by Qatar on the calendar. Speaking to the Australian publication Drive, Westacott revealed the real risk posed by a possible third cancellation in 2022. It is a make or break for Melbourne, said Westacott. I think there's a real risk that with the amount of competition for slots on the F1 calendar, patience only goes so far and patience can wear very thin. So if we weren't able to take the 2022 event in Australia, then I think F1 would be well within their rights to be looking at alternatives to Melbourne. Although Westacott was quick to also reassure that perhaps positive talks and conversations were being had elsewhere in Australia about being able to host the 2022 event. I'm absolutely reassured by the dialogue and the very strong support we have from our Sports and Tourism Major Events Minister, Martin Pakula, continued Westacott. If the race were to be run in 2022, there will still be an obligation to enforce contact tracing and to utilise capacity zones to minimise the risk of transmission. The Australian Grand Prix won't be 100% back to normal just yet. Elsewhere, and looking still further into 2022, Technical Director for McLaren James Key has suggested that the new regulations for Formula 1 in 2022 come with traps. We all know of the changes coming into the sport next year, with radically reduced aerodynamic regulations coming in to encourage closer racing by eliminating or at least reducing turbulent air. Teams have struggled to adapt to regulation changes in the past, but have been able to adapt and rework their cars relatively quickly. But Key suggests that the changes in F1 for next year will make recovering from any missteps early on no simple task for the next few years. You could argue a more restrictive car has less wrong alleys to go down, so the chances of that are maybe less than you'd have with more complex regs right now, said Key. Having said that, I think there are a lot of subtleties too to be exploited, and that's going to be the journey in 22. You're not going to see double diffusers and that kind of huge innovation with these regs. They're too restrictive for that. But there will be other clever ideas and ways of approaching things we will begin to spot as these cars get released. There are traps there. It may be your platform isn't as optimum as someone else's once you look at how someone has lined out their car, for example. That's a job for next year. That's definitely not doable in season. Interesting then that the teams and technical directors are a little bit worried about the regulations in 2022 and how they can limit mistakes in their designs to ensure they get on the right foot and don't have to lose perhaps one season under the new regulations before they can adapt their car again. We'd love to know your thoughts on that and of course the return hopefully of the Australian Grand Prix. Let us know in the comments section below as always, and hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with everything we do as we prepare for Austin coming up this weekend here at GPFans.